Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the races of Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires, and which of these races Creative Assembly should be focusing on going forward, beyond Tides of Torment, assuming that they are intending to keep supporting Warhammer 3. Now, it's worth pointing out with a game like Warhammer 3 that there's always gonna be things in every single race that can be improved upon. It's never going to be a situation of it's good enough. There's always things that can be changed. There's always things that can be improved. I think that is something Creative Assembly needs to understand. Regardless, starting with the races that are going to be affected by Tides of Torment, of course, we have no idea how these races are going to be after Tides of Torment, so I'm going to put them all in unclear tier. That means we need to wait for Tides of Torment to come out to see how they are. But all of these races do absolutely need updates, and they're all going to get updates and significant reworks. For Slaanesh, it's a question of army variety, casualty replenishment, limited campaign, all those kind of problems in them. Like, out of the races affected by Tides of Torment, I think Slaanesh needs them more even than Norsca. See, Norsca has a lot of issues, but Slaanesh with limited recruitment slots, limited roster, lack of variety, the auto-resolve situation, having to fight constant battles, the siege situation that they deal with, yes, Slaanesh does need a lot of work. Then we have High Elves. High Elves are a powerful race. I don't think anyone can dispute that. It's more so the problem that individual legendary lords don't have unique mechanics. Their early game is where they're weakest, and they become ridiculously more powerful later on in a campaign. Worth pointing out that even saying High Elves are weakest at the beginning, that's only within the context of a High Elf campaign. As far as general races go, in Warhammer 3, High Elves are a strong race. It's just that lack of variety, the limitations we have. So we have to wait and see how things are going to work for High Elves with Tides of Torment, but I've made many videos on this. I'll probably make another one before Tides of Torment comes out, but Legendary Lord mechanics, the Ulfwan situation, the Confederation situation, the flow of the race in a campaign, because again, you just start very limited early on, and then you become ridiculously powerful, and it's a lot of power at once. Also, victory conditions, something that Creative Assembly could work on. Then we have Norsca, so issues with the favor of the gods, issues with their economy, issues with just their entire race design. Like, Norsca has a lot of things that Creative Assembly needs to work on. But we'll find out. And I do think Creative Assembly, based on what they've said, they are aware of at least some of these issues, if not all of these issues, with regards to Norsca. Okay, so outside of those races, we start with Beastmen. With Beastmen, I would say they're a high priority race. Beastmen are a race that works in the context of Warhammer 3. You can get a lot of powerful armies. You can get a lot of armies that you recruit units for them for free. You can rather easily confederate legendary lords as the Beastmen and get a lot of power through that. And you can get absurdly high ranks for lords and heroes, as well as items or ancillaries, really, that you make for a Beastman. So there is genuine power with them. My issue with the Beastmen, when you're looking at research tree, campaign mechanics, AI, how the AI controls the Beastmen, it's a case of having a race that was clearly reworked for Warhammer 2, and I don't think that they worked as well in Warhammer 3. Back when they were reworked in Warhammer 2, they were awesome. They became one of the favorite races for a lot of people, but Warhammer 3 is not Warhammer 2. So Beastmen really need an update to work within the context of Warhammer 3. We also got to talk about the AI situation. So Beastmen AI can either do nothing or be really annoying to deal with. And I think that's neither of those situations is what you want. You don't want factions that are just there on the campaign map for no purpose, but at the same time, you don't want them to raise half the map, because then you have to rebuild that. Both of those can be extremely frustrating to deal with. I mean, Beastmen are a more simplistic race, so it's very clear what they need to do with regards to them. Then we have Bretonia. CA has mentioned that they're going to rework Bretonia, but they absolutely need it. Virtually every system that Bretonia has, their unit roster, their heroes, their lords, their vows, their chivalry, their errantry wars, the legendary lord mechanics, Bretonia itself as an area of the campaign map, none of those work very well right now in Warhammer 3. Even cavalry has the problem because of the vows and the high tiers required to get that cavalry. Also, things like victory conditions or things like how you gain certain items for legendary lords. Requiring a player to get the tier 4 structure to be able to get an item, or requiring Albric to go to Sartosa, is not very conducive towards a really fun campaign situation. So just the entire race needs to be reworked. Research trees, confederations. There's a lot. I could make a 1-hour video on the issues of Bretonia. I have made videos on the issues of Bretonia, but yeah, they're the kind of race that does need a lot of work in them. Then we have the Chaos Dwarves. So Chaos Dwarves, I would put them in medium priority. For them, it's less of a case of the race mechanics don't work, because the race mechanics do work very well, maybe too well. But they also have the same problem in a way as High Elves, in that a bit less. So High Elves have really good early game rosters with Spearmen Archers. It's the lack of variety. Chaos Dwarves have the problem of the early game roster is varied, but you're not really using a lot of the good stuff. So, and as you progress through the campaign, you become ridiculously overpowered. But that's not how Warhammer 3 works. Having a race that only gets good at like turn 30, 40, something like that, is not a great campaign experience for a lot of people. Especially because with Chaos Dwarves, the way the things work with them is you don't just gain some power, you get a lot of power. Like, you add Conclave, plus Chaos Dwarf units, plus the Hellforge upgrades, plus Legendary Lord confederations, plus high tier units. Chaos Dwarves end up dominating the map late on, and that's not a great dynamic either. Also, the AI struggles with laborers and hobgoblin recruitment, so there are many things that CA needs to improve for them. Great race, great design, bad balance. So they need to be rebalanced. Maybe take down some of the long-term potential of them. Maybe move some things from the Conclave as Legendary Lord mechanics or research. But basically make the core race better, but reduce some of the power creep we have with Chaos Dwarf. So more unit capacity, better construction times, faster economy early on, but not the situation I have infinite money, infinite armies of really high-end units, and nothing is going to be able to stand in my path, because there's very few things that stand in your path as Chaos Dwarf. So that's the core issue with them. Then we have the Demon Prince. I'm just going to put Demon Prince in unclear, not because I don't think Demon Prince doesn't need a rework. I think he needs a rework. I think that this entire race needs to be removed from the game and rebuilt from the ground up. And that's the reason I'm putting it in unclear. It's a question. Is it worth it for Creative Assembly to spend any time, effort, and energy doing all that, which would be a lot of effort, or is it worth for them to fix everything else? And it's just one Legendary Lord. Now, if they were to say want to add Be'lakor to the Demons of Chaos faction, which, by the way, Be'lakor in the Lord, that's where he belongs, not with Warriors of Chaos. If they want to add Glotkin as per a leak of what Creative Assembly wants to do, okay, fair enough. But if they're not going to add any other Legendary Lord to the race, it's just not worth it. So I'm going to leave it in unclear. I will not put it in even lowest priority or highest priority, because obviously it would belong in highest priority. But high priority race means that it's actually worth for Creative Assembly to engage in that process. It's not a question like, oh, let's just put the worst broken races there. No, it's what is worth doing, and Demon Prince is just not worth it. Then we have Dark Elves. So Dark Elves, it's a bit of a question mark in some ways. So I know people don't like the way slaves work right now. I'm going to say it bluntly. In terms of their economy, in terms of their campaign potential, in terms of many things, Dark Elves are a really good race. The problem is they lack uniqueness of Legendary Lords, the Black Arc situation, the right situation, the research tree, all of that can be improved. Skill lines can be improved. Certain units, like, yes, you get a very powerful and varied early game roster. So Dread Spears, Dark Shards, Black Arc Corsairs, etc. Lots of heroes, all that. But you just kind of stagnate in a way in a campaign. Really good early game. Works very well within the context of a Warhammer free campaign at the moment, but you lack that kind of long-term variety in the long term. So Dark Elves need that better variety of units in the long term. They need to have a reason to recruit those units, because requiring a player to get to tier 5, even for a race like Dark Elves, which have fast construction, so they have normal construction times, and they have instant construction, similar to Dwarfs, but better from the beginning of the campaign. Lots of diplomatic potential. But they do have issues. Legendary Lords, victory conditions, those kind of things are problems as I see it. So there's not necessarily as much work to be done with Dark Elves as I see it, at least from the race itself, like some tiers, research tree rebalance, etc., maybe ranked rebalance, but that's not huge work. It's more so the Legendary Lord situation, Marathi, Malekith, improvements for others that would really make it work. Like Rakarth. Yes, Rakarth could use him. Malice Darkblade, he has a unique mechanic. It's not exactly interesting to deal with. Then we have the Dwarves, the regular Dwarves. So I think in most ways, in the vast majority of ways, Dwarves are the gold standard as a race. They have great mechanics, they have a dynamic campaign, they have a lot of choices between grudges, legendary grudges, confederations. There's so many ways to play a Dwarf campaign. It's the reason why, out of all the races in the game, I have played the Dwarves the most. The problems they have, from my view. Oath Gold is an issue, the way we generate it, because we either generate a lot to the point we don't care about it, or we generate very few of it. Sure, you can try and find a balance between construction costs in a province versus oath gold generation, but yeah, that could be improved on, some economic rebalancing with those buildings of the choice. Another problem is the campaign research tree just blows the battle research tree out of the water. There's almost no reason to focus on it, because dwarf units are very strong, so it's like, oh, you can add more battle power. Well, I don't care about that. The bigger problem, though, if not for one issue, though, I would put dwarves as lowest priority, but they do have one issue. And that is the Legendary Lord mechanics, be it looking at Forik, Belagar especially, and others, right? They don't have unique Legendary Lord mechanics. Only Malachi and to an extent, and emphasize to an extent, Grombrindal have unique mechanics, and those mechanics are great, but essentially every Legendary Lord campaign for the Dwarves is just lesser compared to Malachi or Grombrindal's campaign. Not saying the others are bad. Forgrim can be fun, absolutely, but more variety, more focus on that would work well, from my view. Then we have Cathay. So Cathay I would put in a high priority situation. Similar to the Beastmen, Cathay is a race that works. They have a stronger unit roster, though there's some issues in battles with regards to formations. So specifically the unit formations that you can adopt for your melee infantry as Cathay just are worthless. Jade Warriors will perform better if you take them out of that formation. It's a problem with AI as well. Cathay's problem, though, is while they work, they have a lack of unique mechanics for their lords. Cathay and all their campaigns feel very similar in the sense you play one, you take over, Cathay campaign is over, no one's going to challenge you. And then combine that with the harmony system, combine that with the lack of casualty replenishment, combine that with an over bloated research tree. It just feels like busy work as opposed to dealing with a really fun and engaging campaign. The roster is there. It's more of a question of rebalancing, unique mechanics, casualty replenishment, climate. So I would say they're higher priority than Dark Elves and Cast Dwarves and could really use a rework. Then we have Greenskins. So Greenskins are kind of curious case. Now I know some people dislike them, but here's where I stand on Greenskins. I think when you look at the Greenskins situation, you have a mix of some really awesome stuff and some really questionable stuff. So Grom's campaign mechanic is just like completely outdated. That doesn't work so well at the moment. His starting position, not so great. Gorbad's unique mechanic leaves a lot of things to be desired. But then you have Grimgor, Warzag, and Skarsnik who have awesome campaigns. They don't have unique mechanics. Grimgor doesn't, at least. Nor does Warzag. But they do feel very different enough that it is a completely different campaign experience. Between Skarsnik ambushing, Warzag focusing on the south, which, yeah, does suck. So, where would I put Greenskins? I would say Greenskins kind of deserve a medium priority place. There are things that CA could improve further with them in quite a few respects. So I would say like Dwarves needed less. There are things that I think they can improve, like Legendary Lord, racial mechanics, the WA mechanic in particular. Like, yeah, I think that's the point. Like, when you look at the entire Greenskin picture, it works, it can be fun, it can be interesting. I like playing the race, but it's just like, there's things that they could do better in that respect. Then we have Khorne, of course, lowest priority of a race. Khorne works very, very well in the context of Warhammer 3 campaigns. The only issues I would highlight with Khorne is that demons are not worth getting compared to mortal units, but at the same time you want the demonic buildings for skull cannons, which are an awesome unit. But that's like, nitpicking in comparison to so many other races. I would say the biggest problem with Khorne is more so with Scarbrand and Skulltaker as opposed to Arbol. Arbol has an awesome fucking campaign, undeniably so. The problem for Scarbrand is he starts with the demonic element and you don't care about, like, Chaos Warriors are just better than Bloodletters, all that. They could use a balance pass from like that demonic building requirement, etc. But beyond that, I really don't have many complaints about Khorne. I think they work. Maybe they work a bit too well. Maybe they're a bit too ridiculous. I would say the AI for Khorne, especially Skulltaker and Arbol, could be done better in the perspective they're not using their unique mechanics. Maybe they shouldn't, but what's the point of having them on the map then if they're just going to be like a generic lord? I mean, Arbol is really scary if you're playing Kislev campaign, but there's potential. Skulltaker is just pointless. No, Skulltaker, the DLC lord, is just like the worthless of the lot. Very powerful, I won't dispute that. But it's just like, okay, so I have a campaign that's crap early on, and then I dominate the world later on. That is not a good campaign dynamic. Some people enjoy the power fantasy. I think it's just best if Creative Assembly embraces the idea of a good flow to their campaigns. And you see the difference between two legendary lords with Arbol and Skulltaker. Arbol is ridiculously powerful, so is Skulltaker. Both dominate the map in their own ways, but there's a huge difference. Arbol has a great campaign dynamic to worry about. Skulltaker has a really bad one to deal with. Also, Lustria, yeah, that's always going to be something of an issue. But lowest priority, just more, you can say nitpicking, some things, balance changes, improvements to Skulltaker. That's really, like, if I was talking about Skulltaker, I'd probably put them medium priority, but outside of that, low priority. Kislev. So, with respect to Kislev, I think the race in itself works. Undeniably so, good economy, good mechanics, etc. The problem is, every campaign kind of ends up in the same spot because you're always focusing on Kislev. Kislev as an area of the campaign map doesn't work especially well. It's always the same stuff every single time, so a lack of replayability, and essentially Astank and Boris Ursus just are much better than Katrin Kastaltin. CA did actually mention that they were going to rebalance how Katrin gained supporters with Orthodoxy or Kastaltin with Ice Court. They never did that. So there are some further improvements needed for Kislev. So I'm just going to leave them as a medium priority. They've gone from being one of the worst races to play in the game to being a pretty good and powerful one, but they just need more from my view. Lizardmen. Yeah, Lizardmen go in high priority. Not the highest priority. They're not completely broken as a race from my perspective. They have been improved with 6.3, but jungle, Lustria still sucks, jungle movement still sucks, lack of unique mechanics, and yeah, of course, the broken AI for them. that is a problem with regards to Lizardmen. So all of these are problems. Mazdamundi should be a lot better, should have unique mechanics. I understand CA was very clear that they were not going to do everything for Lizardmen in 6.3. They've gone from being one of the highest priority races in order to make them good to lower than that. So it's better, but there's still more work to be done. Then we have Nurgle. So Nurgle can be a powerful race, but when I look at Nurgle, I'm going to put them in high priority. The reason I'm going to say Nurgle is a high priority race is the inner recruitment is annoying. Actually, I'm going to put them in highest priority because there's one thing that slips them from high to very highest. But when you look at recruitment, when you look at the roster, Nurgle does have a lot of power, but it's just like the annoyance of cycles, waiting from that, the slow build in a game that doesn't reward that, except just making you ridiculously dominant, which again is not a good difficulty flow or game flow. But on top of that, what really irks about Nurgle, think of this. Nurgle has a lot of climate options, except every single Nurgle campaign, which is a race that suffers from climate penalties more than others, every single Nurgle campaign has to deal with mountains, which is not a suitable climate for them. So slow stuff, military buildings taking a long time to build. Like, I think the initial construction of military buildings should be faster and the cycle should be slower. That's my view, right? On it. So just allow us to get the building on the field, CA. So I understand that they want to keep that unique cycle aspect, but the fact that they're using the same resource for plagues as they're using for military buildings is just like, well, I can have a full stack of Chaos Warriors, or I can have a shitty plague that does nothing to the AI anyway. Balanced situation with that. Epidemius is just kind of there. He's not even really worth considering a legendary lord. He's not bad. Like, that's the thing. Like, you look at the Nurgle lords, they're not bad. They're all pretty powerful in their own ways, but they just kind of feel like their campaigns, except Tamarkan, feel underwhelming. And Tamarkan has the issue. It's like, okay, I get this fun, interesting early game. Then I have to grind out all the warlords that I have, all the heroes. But by the time I'm even halfway there, I'm so fucking dominant, I'm just wasting my time playing this campaign. So that's an issue. Then we have Ogres. Ogres are an awesome fucking race. Like, so much choice, uniqueness of campaigns. Yes, Maneater could use improvement to his mechanics. Like, that's the story of Omens of Destruction. Great reworks, great races. After the reworks, not so great DLC Legendary Lords. Like, it's saying something that Arbol is the best by far out of Omens of Destruction, and that's not a question. And I would also say that Scrag and Greasus actually have more interesting campaigns overall than Maneater, because Maneater's limitation on diplomacy, his limitation, the fact that contracts can end up feeling one-dimensional as opposed to, like, weaving a bigger story in that, just feels, lackluster. It works. Like, don't get me wrong. They work. They're powerful. Bit of annoyances here and there, but those just feel more like nitpicks. Like, yeah, Ogres are a really fucking powerful race. They did a great job with the rework. Not necessarily the best job with some of the dynamics. Like, you push one camp very high, very quickly, so you're abusing meat. Some things that could be rebalanced, but they're relatively minor stuff in the grand scheme of things. Then we have Skaven. Where to put Skaven? Well, there is one thing we gotta talk about Skaven. So, a lot of their campaign dynamics do suffer because of other races. So, Ikkeklaw's campaign suffers because of Mogr. Fraud's campaign suffers because Kislev is a pile of crap. And those are two really fun, interesting lords. Skaven are a powerful race. I would say they suffer from the situation of auto-resolve, which is a general issue. So I'm going to put Skaven as a medium tier, medium priority race. But the issues they have more to do with... Actually, I'm going to put a low priority, because realistically, it's not so much the issue with the race itself. The race is great. It's amazing. It's more the issues of everything else in the game. Every context that they have around them. When Skaven don't have to deal with the bad context, they dominate. This is one of the reasons Queek is so good. This is one of the reasons why Snitch is so good. You look at Queek. You see what Queek's AI does in so many different campaigns in Immortal Empires. The guy is just like fighting the world and winning. He's bloody terrifying. Or he might not win a campaign, but he's going to be really, really difficult to defeat. So that just goes to show Skaven actually work very well as a race. It's more so the context, the specific context around certain campaigns, and also Tretch just has a... Why is Tretch a legendary lord? I don't know. That's my perspective on that. Obviously, some things could be improved, but it's not necessarily about the race, though. Yeah, Scroll plagues, better starting situation for Fraught and Ikit, etc. But yeah, overall, very good race. But if I'm considering that context, it's like, yeah, they would be highest priority because the context of the game sucks, the auto-resolve sucks, but that's an issue with the game, not an issue with the race. So we got to differentiate the two of them. Then we have the Empire. So where would I put the Empire? I'm going to say the Empire is a medium priority. The reason they're a medium priority, if you look at range, if you look at cavalry, if you look at artillery, if you're looking at unique mechanics, be it Elspeth, Karl, and Gelt, they all work. Not necessarily the most fun. Like, I don't really care so much for Elspeth, personally. I really like Karl. Problem with Empire is, like, you got Volkmar, you got Marcus Wolfhard. They don't work so well. They have those issues. They could be better. They're not. So those are the kind of things that I would like to see changed for the Empire. But beyond that, really, the bigger problem for the Empire is more so the fact that they, beyond the Legendary Lord situation, it's also the lack of climate options. So you kind of end up with a lot of campaigns that feel rather samey. From that perspective, it's always going to feel like the same path. Climate, though, is a bigger game issue. But on top of that, the Empire just lacks good infantry. And that is actually an important factor, because you look at Cathay, you look at Dwarfs. They have really good line holders. You look at High Elves. The power of those factions is not going to come from their infantry, though they have some really good infantry, but it's ranged, it's artillery or cavalry. Less so with Dwarves, of course. More so for High Elves or Cathay. Not necessarily so much. It's more monsters for Cathay, though. The Empire has parts of that done, but they lack good infantry. Regular greatswords and spearmen are just not good line holders, and they're not going to be able to hold a line for your ranged and cavalry to do their job. I suppose that is a lore accurate, because it's exactly what happened at the Battle of Averheim in the end times, but not a great dynamic to deal with. So the Empire needs a better situation with infantry, or they need to allow us to get more Karabor greatswords and Eldred's guards much easier in the campaign, because those two infantry options are actually good. It's just they're very limited. So yeah, if I could upgrade a regular greatsword or spearman unit to those higher tier units for money, that would be pretty good. That would actually solve a lot of things beyond, of course, Volkmar and Marcus Wolfhard. Then we have Tomb Kings. So Tomb Kings, I would say, have been improved substantially. There's still things that need to be done, but it's more of a balanced pass situation as opposed to like, oh, just rebuild the race from scratch. They've done better respect to that. Actually, I'm going to put them on high priority. I do think it's a disservice to compare them to Lizardmen, though, because I think Tomb Kings are better than Lizardmen, but it's just like when you consider the Books of Nagash, the randomization of the Books of Nagash, the positioning, the grind of their campaigns, the lack of unique mechanics, and so on and so forth. Yeah, Tomb Kings do still need a lot of work. They are better. I'm not going to lie about that. They are better, but still more stuff that needs to be done. Then we have Tzeentch. Yeah, Tzeentch is a highest priority race as far as I see it. The Changeling campaign does work. Kairos' campaign is just like whatever. Tzeentch has, like, Tzeentch's economy, design, unique mechanics, or lack thereof, starting positions, the Changelings like schemes which feel completely irrelevant. Yeah, Tzeentch is a high priority race. They could use another Legendary Lord and a complete racial rework, which they didn't get. And yes, CA needs to improve the Changeling. I understand why CA would not want to do so, because look at the situation. They would have to rebuild two different Legendary Lords that have very different things. But yeah, the Changeling himself actually needs a rework. I'm not joking on that to work. Then we have Vampire Coast. You know, Vampire Coast is kind of like the situation where they're almost on Daniel tier. They are easily one of the worst races in the game to play from the perspective of economy, campaign design, unit design, lack of mechanics, lack of confederations, bad research rate, etc. So they just kind of avoid being on the Daniel tier in a way, but not by much. There is still potential. Whether or not Creative Assembly wants to engage in that, that's going to be up to them. Then we have vampire counts. So here's what I'm going to say about vampire counts. They do need a DLC. They've only got one. But they've stayed relevant throughout Total War Warhammer 3 because the core race design is actually really good. It's more of a rebalance of research trees, uniqueness of Legendary Lord mechanics, that kind of stuff. And also raise dead, auto-resolve, core game issues. So they do need stuff. They do need improvements. They do need rework. They do need a DLC. They do need many different things. But vampire counts do work. Whereas I can't quite say the same about Vampire Coast or Bretonia. Nurgle and Siege have different issues of a different nature, but all the same. Warriors of Chaos, I would say they're a low priority on this list. In fact, you could even argue lowest priority, but I'm not going to go there. Because I think you have that problem with Legendary Lord mechanics, you have campaigns that end up feeling samey, and basically with Warriors of Chaos, you have this situation. You either play Be'lakor or Archaon, who are just flat out better than everyone else, especially Be'lakor, or you're playing a more limited campaign. So the Monogod situation doesn't work, the unique mechanics aren't there. I mean, they have some mechanics, but those are not really unique Lord mechanics. They're like, oh, this Lord has a mechanic from Slaanesh. Okay, who cares? When you have so many ways of using vassalization. Oh, you have Plague. Like, Festus is the exception because he actually is the best Plague Legendary Lord in the game by far. Because he's not using the same resource to recruit units as he is to do Plagues. But again, it's just like, you play one of them, you kind of play them all. They're really powerful, they break the game, etc., etc., etc. So some balance passes, some improvements, uniqueness of Legendary Lords, but like Warriors of Chaos work as a race, just things that they need to do. Then we have Wood Elves. Wood Elves, I would say, as a race, they've got a good amount of things working for them. I think I'm going to leave them in medium priority on this. Things that need to be improved. The race works, the roster is good, the lords are good, they're strong. There's some uniqueness, but could be better. But there's also that level of frustration. It just kind of feels like the intern button simulator with them. So it's a case of like, the race works, but it's boring as dirt. That's all I can say really on the subject of the Wood Elves. Costin signing out. Stay tuned for more.